It is time again to throw myself into this digital web in front of the people, the YouTube community. Hello, YouTube community. And I want to I'd like to keep my presence. I'm doing it a little less frequently, but I'd like to keep my presence going in front of some more work that you see. I am in a studio. I am making paintings and what I call sculpt paintings. Anyway, I thought I would contribute. Well, contribute. Um, it's difficult these days to sort out what is true insight and what is just possibly spectacle. The way I talk about art in general, that it has become primarily spectacle, what is presented to us, and this is all for good reason. I had a conversation with a colleague, a fellow artist, a friend down in the States. He's an excellent artist, and he was saying, you know, Tom, I'm making this. He says to me, I mean, he's very humble. He doesn't say my work is fabulous, brilliant all the time. He doesn't have to convince me. He's doing really good work. And he says, I can't get my foot in the door. And I said to him, he should maybe put the number 923. I've been listening to Cat-Eye and the 923 cabal, who is basically orchestrating some kind of a collective movement toward a result that is not definitely in our favor. So I said, well, just put the number 9 and 23 in your work and let's test it out, see if you can get some interest in what you're doing. And I said it flippantly on a certain level, but in another way, I think this is what it takes to associate ourselves in some symbolic way or real way with this movement towards what I consider to be the romance with the Grim Reaper, the whole idea of the Baphomet and this side of our nature that actually would like to take us away from our inner self, that true self. I consider this to be still a birthright among every individual. Every child that is born has this quality within them, this purity, this virtue, this feeling, this curiosity, the sense of connection, that caring for is part of every human being on this planet. And we're systematically being driven toward some other purpose, some other goal, which is quite destructive, self-destructive, in fact, to the benefit of someone at the other end of it. This is curious. And I referred to this YouTuber Cat-Eye who uses numbers to identify events and create a perspective. And I think it quite frankly creates in me a notion that there is a very complex algorithm behind, if the numbers are in fact giving us an indication of this suprastructure that is directing activity on a very minute level, I must say. This is incredibly complex. If you listen to Cat-Eye's thing about the solar eclipse and the numbers, and it passes over a certain place geographically that relates to bush, poppy bush, and these kind of connections are extremely amazing, intuitive connections. I find this person to be quite intuitive, and I am attracted to people that represent to me this level of intuition because as an artist, as a painter, a sculptor, I look toward this side in another human being that gives me, as I say, something to chew on. So my own sense of this existence, this world, is based not on fact as so much as it is on finding direction through an intuition. This has always been a kind of, what is that? A pillar of humanity to follow those who don't just see the meat and potato on their plate, but they see where the meal is going to come from in the future, kind of thing, if you know what I mean. All right, so I'm just going to make a reference now to having established the idea of the intuitive side of ourselves as it is represented in the best of art, in history, at present. At present, it has degenerated into a sense of this perverse pleasure. This intuition has morphed into what feels like a very perverse pleasure, rooted in some kind of, well, what I say spectacle. There isn't, and spectacle meaning in the sense of you're sitting in, and I'm using this in a very trivial way, the circus, the idea of a circus. I actually loved the circus as a child. I was terrified by the clowns, but I came from a small town in Germany, and the circus came once a year still in the 50s. I was just blown away by the feeling of the circus. And it set up the Shakespearean notion, the world is a stage. The circus helped me understand this on some level. And it probably promoted in myself the idea of wanting to be kind of involved somehow in this mystery. The circus represented this in the best sense. But anyway, what has now occurred in what I call this culture of death is that we associate with all the worst parts of our intuition. And part of that intuition is to feel connected to a sense of, or that intuition is somehow motivated by pleasure in some way. Primarily pleasure, not a feeling of, now pleasure in the sense of like a gratification, but a physical gratification, whereas I see a higher level of satisfaction in being connected to this mystery in a way outside of what my physical world offers. I don't know if that makes sense. Anyway, I'm just going to comment on a notion that is out there, that it's all for power and money, and I disagree. I want to say it's not about power and money. Power and money is a byproduct. It's a byproduct of something that is a lot more profound. And as a painter, what I find is it's not so much just the physical object that you observe, but it's what is transmitted through that object. And power and money is like a painting. It's like it transmits something. It communicates something. And on the level of ownership, how we are being manipulated within this extremely complex algorithm, I'll address this a little bit before the end. There is something that is much more profoundly operating than just power and money. And that is this, what I see as a totally perverse sense, corrupted sense within ourselves as indulging the ability to do something that is primarily now, it's nefarious. It's like something that is not leading us, it's giving us a garden path to destruction. This is in itself the motivation, and the power and money is all there for the few that have access to these extremely complex algorithm or system or tied into this part of this reality. And I question every aspect of our reality profoundly. Fundamentally, I am not on board with whatever it is that we believe to be a fact or true. To me, is very easily argued against. Whatever aspect of reality that you see around you can be perceived in a completely different and possibly even opposite, well, likely opposite way. Whatever it appears is things are not what they appear to be. Okay, so the idea of money and power, as a lot of people feel, oh, okay, the motivation is money and power. The money and power is already in place for the people that are operatives within this system of control, rooted in some complex situation, as Cat-Eye points out. And he says it's money and power. No, it's not. It's just the mere satisfaction of being able to do that, what you want to do. And you will associate yourself. This is very seductive. You as a person, I feel myself as a person seduced by certain things in life that are not wholesome. Just look at addictions. Addictions are something that feel like satisfying to us, but they're ultimately very destructive. And it's the same thing. This is an addiction. This is what is considered to be psychotic. The psychopath, these are psychopaths who indulge in whatever it is that they feel. If they can kill the last rhino, they would be the one blowing the rhino away because they can, because they have the gun. There's no connection to this reality. And this is the principle of all actions. This is behind the actions that we face in these psychopaths. It's not power or money, it's a byproduct. The power and money will be given to you if you comply within this system of operation that satisfies this urge. So when people are drawn toward the icons in our culture that are so degenerate, they're numbnuts. There's nothing between the ears. They're wingnuts. They have nothing to offer us other than the spectacle of being indulgent. This is ultimately what it comes down to. So you see, I felt I needed to come out again. I've said this in other videos. I've said this in other ways. And the idea of the, okay, let me just briefly think about this and express the idea of this control system that is revealed through a certain sequence of numbers that reappear apparently within dates or within letters, names, events. These can apparently be analyzed. I am privy to some extent to the idea of numbers, equations on a Kabbalistic level, and Kabbalah is not some demonic practice. It just, as the Bible means, the original word Bible is kibbul, which means receive. And we need to be able to receive, right? It's got nothing to do with nefarious stuff going on. It's just the way people use it. And I had an understanding, and which is why I appreciate this Cat-Eye person, because he is using the intuition around numbers in his own way. Whereas I was looking at Kabbalah and understood that words are also equations. They're not just numbers, they're equations, which is interesting, which ties into the idea, if you have a number, you can establish algorithms. And algorithms, I don't really, I wasn't good at math, but I got through it. But the idea that there are equations that reveal, or even to the extent are able to control us on a certain level, however this is implemented, I am really, this is so complex, I wouldn't even have a clue. Other than it appeals, this is my conclusion on these algorithms, other than it appeals, it is a very seductive manner in which to bring people, to let them feel they're satisfied. You get shit-faced by drinking too much, and for a moment, 5 minutes, you feel euphoric, and then you have a headache and you feel like crap for the next week. So this is basically the association I make with this whole experience on a larger level, on a long-term 100-year plan, 50-year, 1-year plan, how we are now in a state of, we're experiencing hangover from this indulgence that we have attached ourselves to collectively, individually by not acting our conscience, which is the only barrier for this group to take hold of us. If we abandon our conscience, we don't have a chance, because the seductive aspect of this is so powerful that the only thing that stands in the way is our conscience. So people exercise the way to overcome this is to do the right thing every day, and even if we make mistakes, we'll get it right eventually if this is operative in us. So that's our only line of defense. Power and money is a byproduct, not the reason. And I thought I'd just chime in, and as I appreciate people of intuition as a painter, as an artist, I think it's important to encourage and feel this. And I'll just a couple of comments on what it is that I'm understanding about the things that I'm doing in my work. It's quite rough. It's quite rough, the work that I'm involved in now. I've never done anything like this. I'm not sure why I'm doing what I'm doing, but I call it my broken symmetries. And symmetry appears in our observation in the real world out there as we understand the minutia, the small, the microscopic side, the idea of the Mandelbrot, the fractal universe, the repetitive, almost symmetrical universe that exists. That has been broken. That has been broken. And I call my new work broken symmetries, and I'm elaborating certain aspects, and I'm introducing other elements within this work that have to do not with symmetry, but again, I can't really explain it. I'm just following this path now that I'm on, and the work that you see behind me there, they look kind of, one is a bit circular, one is more painterly rectangular, and this is an older work. I'm a oil painter primarily, and actually that painting is hanging the way it should hang. And I mentioned this before, people get so irritated when something isn't hanging straight. Anyway, I'll leave it there. It's not power and money, it's the indulgence part of it that really is the seductive thing that that these psychotics get. They get a thrill. The thrill is more important than the money.